to see if this works. I feel like I finally got it all dialed in. I really do. And we're connected. Let's do this thing. Let's light this candle. All right. And boom. Here we go. Okay. So, let me see. Let me turn this up a little so I can hear myself. That's much better. All right. So, hopefully, this is finally working across the board. Bottom line is, I've been trying to get this stream online for days. It looks like I finally seem to be getting it. I'm just watching my drop frames, 0%. That looks great. I had the bit rate at 2,500, and I think that was what was causing me trouble, to be honest. Anyway, I am libertarian, and I'm broadcasting this as kind of my first. This is Brian for Liberty. I'm Brian. I'm a libertarian in South Carolina. We got the primaries coming up June 11th. We've got the election in November. We've got Donald Trump guilty on 34 felony counts. We've got all this nonsense going on, and there's all this hate and vitriol, and it blows my mind that at the core of this is a bunch of just regular tax-paying American citizens, people with mortgages and bills to pay, who are freaking out about how expensive things are getting at the grocery store, who are trying to figure out how they're going to figure out a way to put their kids through college, how they're going to pay the bills, how they're going to retire. All these concerns, all these worries that we have in common as American citizens, all these things that we have in common with each other, and we are fighting over which multimillionaire politician we're going to vote for. It's kind of like I view politics a little like sports. It's like we're arguing over who the best and worst politicians are as if they care about us. These are out of touch multimillionaires who couldn't care less about the average American, what we're going through. But we will argue and scream and yell at our fellow Americans, our neighbors, people we live next door to, people who have the same struggles we do, over a few, I like to call them the intractable issues, over a few things that we truly disagree on. While these two political parties run the country into the ground, racking up massive amounts of debt, engaging in global military adventurism, spying on us. I mean, it's crazy. Taking massive contributions from Big Pharma, taking massive contributions from military-industrial contractors, and acting as if they have our best interests in mind. I can't remember who it was who said this. It could have been. It sounds like a George Carlin quote to me, but I don't know that that's who it was. It sounds like a George Carlin quote, but if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it. That's the core of this whole thing. If voting made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it. And the bottom line on that is these things, this list that I have here, and I'm going to, as this goes on, I'm going to be doing, news. I'm going to be talking about economics, but as an introduction to kind of the new format, the podcast, the multi-stream, all that stuff, I just kind of want to walk through this stuff because these are the things that aren't going to change no matter who you vote for. These things aren't changing. Trump, Biden, those two guys, none of this is going to happen. And what kills me, I've said this a million times, hating Donald Trump, hating him, like the true, like he's the next Hitler, like all this stuff, is as crazy as the people walk around with MAGA hats. It's this insanity that these two guys are just worlds apart. We have two 4-year presidencies to look back on now. We have 4 years of Joe Biden and 4 years of Donald Trump. You tell me where the groundbreaking difference was between these two guys that makes us just insane towards each other, just insane with anger at each other, that one is so much better than the other one. He's so terrible. Oh my God, if we can't deal with the fact that the other guy might win, you show me. And you had, you had, I mean, you had Donald Trump running $1 trillion deficits right up to the pandemic. He oversaw the lockdowns. He oversaw the shutdowns. He signed the CARES bill, 6 point some odd trillion in new debt. The military industrial complex didn't shrink by an inch. The swamp, quote unquote, that he was going to drain didn't shrink by a buck. Nothing changed. We continue to back. People like to say no new wars. Okay, I will give Trump credit for no new wars. We continue to back the Saudis in their thing on Yemen, which is the Houthis thing that we're getting involved in now, and it's all this nonsense. It's not like we did any better. There are things I think he did better than Joe Biden. I think he was a little bit better on the he was better on the border than Joe Biden. I'll give him that. I'm glad he got us out of TPP. I'm glad he got us out of the Paris Climate Accords. But in the grand scheme of things, has the fundamental function of government been altered at all by the great Donald Trump spending 4 years in D.C.? I would say that the Democrats almost have a better argument to make. The Democrats could almost make a better argument that they should be afraid. And the reason for that is because I can say as a direct result, now look, my position on abortion is pretty complicated, but I can say that the Democrats have at least something they can point to and say, look, if it wasn't for Donald Trump, Roe versus Wade wouldn't have been overturned. So you could say that. At least they've got that. But the love of Trump, the Trump is this savior who's going to save our country. Well, you got 4 years of them. I mean, both these guys want to throw tariffs up against China. Well, tariffs are a horrible economic policy that only hurts Americans. There's about 1 million things we could do at the federal level that aren't complicated, that would make the world a much better place if we could just get some of these policies. I just read an article, or a write-up on the Jones Act. So there's all these shortages taking place in Alaska right now because of the Jones Act, which doesn't allow, you're going to love this, doesn't allow for the shipment of goods from an American port to another American port. The ship that does that has to be built in the United States and flagged in the United States. So there's not a lot of Jones Act compliant ships left in the fleet. So if one of these ships goes down, it creates massive shortages. There's a reason, like Hawaii doesn't really buy from the main, because it's expensive to buy from the mainland, because there are Jones Act ships to take stuff out to Hawaii. It's like there's all these stupid policies and regulations out there, stuff that most Americans you could get Democrats and Republicans to agree on eliminating some of these regulations and free up the economy a little bit. They don't want to do that because they benefit from the status quo. And if you benefit from the status quo, why would you want to change it? You're not going to change the status quo if it's what's making you wealthy, if it's what's making you powerful. You're not going to change that. So the idea that we're going to vote our way to this change, that we're going to vote our way to something different happening, to me, it's just silly. So when I talk about this list as kind of an introduction, as kind of a way to say, here's the problem, both parties promote perpetual war. The United States has been a state of constant war for almost since its founding, for God's sakes. Never stop spending. And we talk about inflation. So this is the thing that gets me with the Republicans, by the way, with the never stop spending stuff. These are the guys who talk fiscal conservatism. They talk about the budget. They talk a good game about spending less and the national debt and blah, 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 blah. Then they make excuses for Trump. You can't point to a Republican president who didn't increase the budget, where the government got smaller, where we shrank government at all. And we hear about this inflation, and this inflation is getting laid at Joe Biden's feet. And God dang it, if you know anything about me at all, you know I'm not a Joe Biden supporter. But this inflation gets laid at Joe Biden's feet. This is a multi-decade policy of printing money out of thin air and devaluing our currency. And the president who really kicked this off was who? It was Nixon. Nixon was the final nail in the coffin of any kind of monetary control by closing the gold window. So the reason we did this is because politicians have no self-control. They'd rather buy votes than be fiscally responsible. So neither party wants to stop spending, because the only way to fix what's going on in this country right now is to reduce the spending. to reduce the spending and reduce the regulatory environment so that we can actually get some things built and we can actually do some things. Neither party wants to do that because the big businesses who pay to get these guys elected don't want competition. So what they do, but one of the greatest, I'll tell you this, one of the greatest cons big businesses ever pulled, and the Democrats, this is more on the Democrat side than the Republican side, is that big business doesn't like regulation. Big business loves regulation. Big business regulation, higher minimum wages, all these different rules and regulations you got to follow, permitting, all this different stuff. This is the cost of doing business for places like Walmart and Amazon and major construction companies and all this, that, and the other. It's part of it's built into their budgets, right? Because they do so much business, they do so many transactions, they can live on much thinner margins. And it keeps small businesses, it prevents competition. They love that. So the idea that big business doesn't like regulation, that's a huge, huge lie that's been sold to us through propaganda. We've been propagandized to believe big business doesn't like business. Powerful corporate interests are fighting against regulation. They're not. They love regulation because it prevents competition. That's how mom and pop get put out of business. So the Epstein's client list thing, by the way, the reason I'm multi-streaming, I just want to throw this out there real quick. The Epstein's client list thing, by the way, last time I talked about this on TikTok was the second time that TikTok banned me from doing lives, took my account down in the middle of a live, by the way, took me down and banned me for 7 days. It was the second time that happened to me. And when that happened, I said, I'm going to get myself set up to multi-stream so that I am not reliant on this one platform. So right now, if you're on TikTok watching me, please go to my link tree and follow me on my other platforms because I will talk about stuff that will get me taken down on TikTok, but hopefully I could. YouTube will only demonetize me, and I'm not even monetized, so it doesn't matter. At least my content will stay up there. So if you are watching me on TikTok, I would really appreciate it if you follow me on my other platforms. Anyway, that's my only pitch. Owned by the military industrial complex, by the way. Is it Nikki Haley? Is Nikki Haley the one who is actually on the Boeing board? Is it Nikki Haley? I think she's the one who's on the board. And here's what kills me is the Nikki Haley thing. She's on the board of Boeing. But a bigger conflict of interest I can't imagine. And the only thing she said intelligent during her whole campaign, oh, there we go. We're getting a little learn more about U.S. elections. I'm getting flagged for, I swear to God. The only intelligent thing she said, the only thing that I could have agreed with was raising the Social Security retirement age. We have to raise the Social Security retirement age. She said 70, I think more like 72 to 75. Social Security needs to be phased out. So you need to raise the retirement age, massively reduce military spending, direct those funds to shore up Social Security in the short term and allow young people who are subsidizing boomers, let young people opt out of that program. So you shore it up in the short term. So I'm 48 years old. I'll be 49 this year. I'm okay saying I'm not going to take Social Security until I'm 72, 70, 72, whatever the case may be. I'm okay doing that, delaying my Social Security benefit if we can solve the problem. So you raise the retirement age. I have to delay when I get Social Security, but that's okay. I'm older. I'm more established. I don't think young people should be subsidizing my retirement. Let's raise my Social Security retirement age so I can't draw it as early as I thought. It shores it up for the people who are collecting it now. I keep paying into the system, and then say everybody under the age of, say, 30 can just opt out of the program altogether and go, I'm not interested in participating in the Social Security program, and phase this effing thing out and sunset Social Security. You need to do that. We need to end federal Medicaid and return it. And you could turn it over to the states, whatever you want. That tax needs to go away. All payroll taxes need to end, and we need to end those programs. So that's a pretty easy cut. So you want to fix and then you, like I said, you have to half or even 70% reduction in military spending has to take place. Those are the things I feel like we have to do. We have to get those things done. I don't see another way I don't see another way around it. We've got to get those things done. If we don't fix entitlement programs, everything else is BS. Rand Paul did a great speech about how much of our budget the Congress actually votes on or has control of, how much of it is mandatory spending and how much they actually have control on over. And it's insane how little Congress actually controls. The rest of the spending it's automated spending. We're just pumping, just pumping out money that Congress has no control over. All this mandatory spending that we're doing on one side is insane. Congress has virtually no control over it. We're not willing to touch any of it. Social Security is the third rail of politics and all this other nonsense. And the Republicans, heaven forbid, we cut a nickel from military spending. So at the end of the day, we're running multi-trillion-dollar annual deficits, and neither political party wants to do anything about it. But let's argue with our neighbors about abortion and transgenderism, because somehow that's going to, when we hit the debt crisis, right, when the debt crisis actually hits, and it's coming, this little bit of inflation we're feeling right now, this is nothing. When the debt crisis actually hits, none of those issues are going to matter. People are not going to be arguing about this nonsense anymore at all. People aren't going to be talking about it. Transgenderism, what restroom to use, feminism, all this stuff that we are arguing about, when the debt crisis hits, nobody's going to be talking about that crap anymore. It's going to be over. The serious issues, all this other stuff is a distraction from this massive collision course we're on with an actual when we're on this collision course for financial, because when the financial system collapses, believe me, if you think that we're hanging on by an edge now, when the financial system truly starts unwinding, and it will, when this debt cycle starts to unwind, you have no idea what that's going to look like. We can't imagine. We've been so comfortable and so sheltered for so long that we can't imagine what it's going to look like when this whole thing starts to come unwound, when this whole thing starts to come undone. And it's going to happen. It's an inevitability. Math doesn't have a political party. Math doesn't care. This is the first year we've spent more on the interest on the national debt than we spent on the military. We're spending interest on the national debt. We're spending over $1 trillion a year now in interest on the national debt. But that's okay. It'll be fine. You'll be able to get all these little moral things and social things that you're concerned about. That'll still be your concern when you're standing in line for 4 hours to get a loaf of bread because there's no food and you can't heat your house. And right now, people are worried about putting groceries on the table and the cost of groceries, and this is nothing compared to the economic crisis that's right in front of us. But it's like, okay, don't worry, we'll just keep on trucking, and neither party cares, because politicians' timeline, a politician's concern for what's going on in the country is only as far ahead as the next election cycle. And so they're not going to say things or do things that would lead to them not getting reelected. That's why Trump went out and criticized Nikki Haley when she said he crushed her on like raising the Social Security retirement age, which, it's a necessity. It needs to be done. We got to fix these programs. But when your leading Republican candidate, the presumptive Republican nominee, the quote-unquote small government Republican guy who is Donald Trump, isn't willing to have an honest conversation about the economy, thinks that tariffing imports is a good idea, well, then you don't have a fiscally responsible political party. So all you have left, they agree on fiscal policy. Joe Biden and Donald Trump both want to tariff China. So they agree from an economic perspective. When Trump was president, he actually talked about, he specifically said that he was upset that the Federal Reserve wasn't lowering rates even more. So they're both easy money. From an economic perspective, they're both Keynesian economy guys who are demand side. They're going to trade war. We're going to tariff this, tariff that. Neither of them want to deregulate the economy to any extent that allows for more productivity or anything like that. These are the same guys from an economic perspective. So we're on this course. We're going to get there. So when I say never stop spending, I'm not here to pat one political party on the back or anything like that. I'm here to tell you that whatever crisis is coming, it's unavoidable, not because we don't have the tools to fix it. It's unavoidable because we don't have the leadership in place that has any actual desire to fix it, because talking about the things it would take to fix this problem may not allow them to get reelected, and that is vastly more important to them than actually solving any of our problems. And we have to know that. That's, you know what I mean? What else? Spies on Americans. This is an interesting one for me, especially in the age of AI, especially as a guy who's had multiple lives taken down in process. So I know AI, at least on one of these apps, probably on all of them, is listening to me. And they're just waiting for me to say the wrong thing and to use that to take down my stream. And I'm nobody. This is what kills me. So it's like both ends of the spectrum, right? You see I don't care what you think about Donald Trump. You see a billionaire ex-president being prosecuted. I didn't say persecuted, prosecuted. Maybe deserves to be in court. Maybe I don't know. I haven't read the briefings. I haven't read the indictments. You see him being, and you go, wow, if they can go after him, they can go after anybody. That's true. I also look at myself and I go, man, if they'll silence my little voice, what they're saying is, are the people who are already big enough that it'll be noticed if we take them down, we have to keep letting them talk. But little guys, the next generation of commentators, the next generation of podcasters, next generation of people who are going to be outside legacy media, on social media, on these different platforms, saying things outside of the message, are already being silenced. They're already being trained. We're already being trained what we can and cannot talk about. I know what I can say on certain apps that will get me taken down. Things I just don't say this thing if you want to stay on this platform. We all know that it's the same thing with the algorithm. So like, we're not pushing this out, we're not pushing that out. So that there's not going to be, in my opinion, there's not going to be a next generation of, quote, a free press, of non-corporate owned opinions being promulgated through the public sphere. I don't think that's going to be a thing that happens. So they're spying on us. I mean, the idea that they're not listening to your phone calls, they're not reading your emails, the government doesn't know every single thing you're doing, all the money you're spending, all the places you're going, all that stuff. The government knows all that stuff. And I think most Americans are well aware of that. I think and that's incredibly insidious. And that's, Snowden, Assange, these guys who try to shine a light, whistleblowers who whistleblowing against the federal government's a pretty, that's a pretty risky proposition. But those guys, that's one thing. The spying on us is one thing. The using algorithmic AI to suppress alternate opinions, alternate viewpoints, to prevent people from providing a different view on how the world works, to using AI and that kind of intelligence and that kind of power to suppress those voices is a far more dangerous thing to me, because, speech is number one, guns are number two. And there's a reason that those are one and two. You've got to be able to speak. I was just watching this thing with Chris Cuomo, and he was talking about the ivermectin, but he's like acknowledging that, he's taking ivermectin. And what he was saying in his own defense was that they were getting bad information. And my thought on this was, I don't care. It's okay that you were getting bad information. There was a lot of information floating around during the pandemic. So it's okay. You were getting bad information, and it's okay for you to repeat bad information. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that they didn't let anybody talk about anything else. Oh, you're taking a horse tranquilizer. You're doing this. You're doing that. And he said to drink bleach and all this different stuff. Well, come to find out, after the fact, how many lives could have been saved if we had let other alternative voices out there, because it's come to find out, hey, geez, some of these treatments they were talking about are effective. And guys like me who are like, go get the jab if that's what you want to do. I'm not anti anything, but geez, isn't it a little suspicious that here we have this drug that is being used to treat people successfully. Here's a doctor who says, "Hey, I've treated 700 patients with it. I haven't lost a single one." And it wasn't just ivermectin, but I haven't lost a single one. You look at the Africa and I think it's ivermectin was the malaria, whatever, the hydroxychloroquine I think was the malaria drug. I'm not sure which one. And how their incidences were so much lower, and all this, their mortality rate was lower. And you go, geez, is it possible that a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company maybe doesn't want this cheap, readily accessible drug that's already been through FDA trials that people have been taking for decades? Maybe they would rather sell this vaccine than sell a cheap, affordable drug. I mean, can we? And what killed me about that was first of all, the whole stupid vaccine thing happened under Trump, Operation Warp Speed and all that stuff. That happened under Donald Trump. It's like Republicans and Democrats both forgot about that. And then the Democrats, who used to be like they would question the institutional integrity of like corporations. They were the ones who it was their job to hold these corporations and put them under a microscope and go, these are bad actors, these evil corporations. It's like, hey, there's this cheap drug that might be a very effective treatment for this particular thing, but it would also cost them billions of dollars of profits on this vaccine. And it was the left who was like, oh, you're spreading misinformation. It's like, you can't even acknowledge the possibility that this company you were calling evil just a couple of years ago might be suppressing information about a significantly less expensive alternative to this other thing, like, in order to protect their bottom line. Well, yeah, of course. That's what was taking place, right? I mean, honestly, right? Doesn't that just ring a little bit true? So, I don't know. I'm jumping all over the place because I'm tired. And I honestly, just real quick, just as an aside, I built a streaming machine so I could go multi-platform. It took me weeks to get it working. Then I couldn't get the freaking stream to work. It kept dropping on Facebook, and it was just a mess. So this is my first night where I think everything's working properly, and I'm kind of all over the place. But so the owned by Big Pharma, but this goes Spies on Americans, owned by Big Pharma, owned by the military-industrial complex, but most importantly, doesn't give an F about you. And this is, for me, I think, the Represent Us with the Jennifer Lawrence is out there, and they're talking about this and how I think something like on average a politician spends 73% of their time engaged in activities that are focused on getting them reelected. They spend 73% of their time trying to keep their job. Their primary role, essentially their primary role as politicians, is to keep their job, and that's it. And I think that's a really sad thing, and that's a real testimony to where we are as a nation and where we are with these two political parties. So what is the point of this kind of hopeless spiel that I've been on? I think my point is pretty simple. All I'm trying to say is, if you are going to make a difference, if you are going to try and make your community a better place, if you're going to try and make your world a better place, you are not, unfortunately, going to accomplish a great deal at the ballot box. It's going to be through community action. It's going to be through your neighborhood. It's going to be going to a church in a low-income neighborhood. It's going to be knocking on doors in your neighborhood. It's going to be local fundraisers. It's going to be reaching out to the people in your community who need your help because the state isn't coming for you. And then it's going to be local elections where you can, and you better be voting for people. I guess if there's something you can do at the ballot box, it's this. You better be looking at your state and figuring out how you can isolate your state from the economic crisis that's getting ready to hit the federal government. And it might be too late, but your state better be taking steps to insulate itself from the federal government. If there's something that I can give Republicans a little credit for, and this was an incredibly unpopular thing, and it cost them elections throughout the country, but is pushing back against the Medicaid expansions. And because you don't want to create a higher level of dependency within your state on the federal government. Bad things are coming. You can't run What, we're adding $1 trillion to the debt now every 100 days. You can't. There's not a long term. This isn't a long term situation. This isn't the kind of thing that's going to carry on over any extended period of time. This thing's going to come unwound in a freaking hurry. And you're seeing this inflation right now, and things happen very slowly and then they happen very fast. And we're getting very close to the very fast part. The very fast part is coming up. So we better start getting prepared for it. And that is what I will say about the economic part. And like I said, I think that to some extent, not to any great extent, not that they've done like wonderful things or anything like that, but to some extent, the Republicans have at the very least done an okay job kind of isolating their states to some extent on from what's going on, what's coming for the rest. So anyway, oh look, I've got by the way, for those of you who are watching my comment section, I had the same person comment the exact same comment in 2 different places. So I think that's pretty funny. Hey, whatever. I got some views on a couple of different platforms. I'll take it. Anyway, what else do I got here? I don't have a whole heck of a lot else. I will say this. I was on here the other night. My intention was to talk about the whole, I'll bring this video up. The whole, what was the Jameel, what's her face, criticizing, let's see, there we go, Caitlin Clark, and it just kills me. Let's see here if I could find this thing. Joe Rose against Caitlin Clark. So anyway, Jameel Hill comes out and she's talking about that her attractiveness and the fact that she's white is playing a role in her success and her popularity or whatever the case may be. And then it just reminded me of the Donovan McNabb thing and Rush Limbaugh. For those of you who are too young to remember, Rush Limbaugh was on ESPN's, I think, Sunday Night Countdown or something like that. And they were talking about Don McNabb on there. And what they say, so he comes on and he says, well, they're talking about how McNabb is not playing up to his standards or whatever. And Rush Limbaugh comes out and he says, well, I don't think he was ever as great as they wanted. I think the media and the NFL wanted to have a popular black quarterback. They wanted a successful black quarterback. And I was just thinking, like, Jameel Hill and Rush Limbaugh intersected for just a minute. What are the odds? But there was, and it to me, it showed like this weird, I know that people have argued in the past about like the party switch. That intersection of Rush Limbaugh and Jameel Hill making this essentially the same racist argument, but in 2003 it was a white wing conservative, Rush Limbaugh, criticizing a black quarterback, and now it's a black podcaster criticizing a white basketball player. They're making the same skin color related argument, and I'm like, man, how the world is like, instead of, it's always like one of these deals where it's like we are going to over correct and go the other way. It's like, can we get to a place where maybe it's just not possible for us to get to anything that resembles like a post-racial society. Maybe that's just never going to happen. Maybe it's beyond our capacity as humans to get to a place where we are actually living in this society where we're like, you know what? Why don't we just focus on, merit and the quality of a person's character? All that crazy, crazy stuff that Martin Luther King used to talk about, content of character, not the color of a person's skin. It just feels like in lieu of everything else that's going on in this country, that we are getting into this weird, every single thing. I don't like going down the woke or anti-woke. I don't like going down the social rabbit hole. I prefer to keep my commentary economic in nature. That's where I prefer to live. So I don't really like going down this rabbit hole. I don't like talking about transgenderism. I don't like talking about abortion. I'm not comfortable with those because they're I believe those to be more subjective than objective. I like more objective realities. I like economics. What can I say? But it's just this weird thing where it's like, are we ever going to be able to get to a place where we aren't focused almost exclusively on who people are having sex with and what color their skin is? Like, is this really, like, why are these essentially the most important traits when it comes to people around us, that these are the things that are absolutely the most important for us to discuss, to talk about? I just don't, are we ever going to get to it? And I generally believe this is part of the whole keep us distracted, bread and circuses. Big Sunday show. Let's see if I can get this video up. I'm trying to pull this video up here real quick if I can. But are we ever going to get to that place? And I don't know. I honestly don't know if we're going to have a possibility to get to a place where we're moving past all of that nonsense, because it's almost like when a Jamil Hill, when an African American makes these comments, who's going to call her out for it? I was not on the wrong side. I believe historically I'm on the right side, but I was from a racial perspective, I was not a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. I got called all kinds of racial slurs: Uncle Tom this, Uncle Tom that, bootlicker this, bootlicker that. And I was just like, look, if the goal is to reduce police brutality, putting black in front of in the title just didn't make sense. It was divisive right out of the gate, and I think that was intentional. But anyway, when a Jamil Hill comes out and says something like this, well, a white person can't criticize her for that. It's got to be another person of color, and then you're gonna get attacked by your own people, by your own side. So like, there's nobody to stand against that kind of stuff. I don't know. So I don't know if it's that. Look, I think it's pretty easy to look at an overtly racist white person and shout that down. I think as a society, we've gotten to a place where that is absolutely unacceptable. Like, we know it. It's just the way it is. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying you better keep a lid on that stuff. But when it's in this other nuanced kind of intersectional way, it's how do you shout that down? And so I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of rambling now. I'll be honest with you, for those of you who are here still sticking around, I'm trying to get to an hour. That's where I'm at 36 minutes. I got 24 minutes to go. I'm going to get to a freaking hour. It's my first multi-stream. I'm going to get to an hour. I'm going to have some stuff to comment on. I'm going to have some video to chop up and put out. But more importantly, I'm going to make sure this all works, and I can come back here with some news stories. My goal is every Monday night. No, that's not right. Every night at 9 o'clock to come on and do a live. I'm going to talk news, all this other stuff. So if you're not a subscriber on whatever platform you happen to be seeing me on right now, please do so. Take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can join my live. I'm going to figure out how to have the chats up across all the platforms so I can respond to comments. My thought process is to respond to comments at the front and the back and do like an hour in the middle. That's kind of my goal. But I will be coming on here live, and more likely than not, I'll be talking about economics and storage. But I wanted to get this out here kind of as, if you come onto my channel and you see my content, to know that I am not partisan. I will, full disclosure, say that I came to libertarianism from the right. I'm very much a centrist now, but I just don't believe, I believe in the non-aggression principle. I don't think we should be forcing people to do things. People should be free to live their lives as they see fit. I don't think either political party really believes in that. Here, I got a great example of that, actually. And this comes from, I'm down here in South Carolina. This is a red state. Doesn't get much redder. These are the people who are going to talk about liberty. These are the people who are going to talk about freedom. That's what the folks down here are going to talk about. And I can tell you, there's a law on the books that went in place in 2017. It's essentially a dram shop bill. And what it does is it requires bars to carry $1 million of liability if they serve liquor. and it's putting a lot of small bars out of business. It's hurting a lot of people down here. Oh, hey now, what happened? Where'd my sound go? Oh, okay, so if I turn off the preview, I mute my sound. Okay, so I was saying there's a dram shop law down here, essentially requiring small bars to carry $1 million of liability insurance, and it's putting a lot of small businesses out. It's closing a lot of small bars down. And there's a politician down here who, God, if I could remember his name, there's a politician down here who gave a little spiel on this. And he's saying he's talking about not being interested in adjusting the liquor liability law. What he was saying is that he was interested in the insurance companies differentiating between a restaurant that serves alcohol with food and a quote dive bar selling dollar shots. And I couldn't help but think to myself, what an elitist asshole this guy is to say something like that. I mean, really? And he said, so if the restaurant can save some money on their rates and the dive bar goes out of business, that's kind of the best of both worlds. That's the outcome he's looking for. He literally said he wants to see businesses go out of, he literally said he wants them to go out of business. That's like, those are the words that came out of his mouth. And I couldn't help but think to myself, what an elitist jerk. My wife and I went out the other night for a couple of taco platters, a couple of beers on my end, a few cocktails on her end. The bill with tip was $120. Yeah, I want to make sure there's some dive bars open. I don't think people with a bunch of money are the only people who should be allowed to go out and have a drink and unwind after a long day at work. In the view of the inflationary pressures that we're feeling right now, maybe a couple places that serve dollar shots isn't a horrible idea. The other thing is this law came out 7 years ago and has done nothing to reduce DUIs, has done nothing to reduce DUIs, traffic fatalities, none of that. It has had not a single net positive impact on what's actually taking place on the roads in South Carolina, which means it's a completely ineffectual law that isn't doing any good, but we're not going to revoke it. There's some conversation around potentially reforming it or seeing what the changes they can make to it, but nobody's really talking about actually changing the law. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of odd for something. Then I remembered something. Politicians suck. They're not here to do anything. And so, of course that's the case. It's frustrating. So anyway, that's right. This authoritarian people should be free to live their lives bit. It's like, there's not a party that believes that. I'm in a red state and people down here don't believe that. So that's pretty freaking unfortunate. What do we got going on here? Manage on second device. Interesting. Just checking out some of these. Checking out my stream stats. Not with viewers. I don't have any viewers. Just checking out what I've got going as far as the quality of my stream. Is it up and running and everything's working the way it's supposed to? And it seems to be. So that's great news for me. Let's see what else we got here. Former Attorney General Bill Barr predicts Trump's criminal charges will be overturned. Well, of course. What a silly little story this is. Former Attorney General Bill Barr predicts Trump's criminal charges will be overturned. Yeah, he's going to, if you look at the jury instructions, it's going to get, of course it's going to be overturned. I mean, I don't think his criminal trial was an abomination. I don't think it's an affront to I got a couple issues with it. First, my thought was, I don't like the idea. I don't like the look. I don't think it's a good look to criminally charge the leading political rival. I don't care if he's a former president or not. He's the leading political rival. So my thought process was this, and I don't know what people would think of this as an idea to solve this problem, is to say, look, if he wins the presidency, then we can impeach him. We'll have an impeachment hearing. That's how we try presidents for crimes. The Jan 6 stuff happened while he was still president, so certainly. But all of this stuff, we could impeach him and see, and go through that process. If he doesn't win the presidency, then we'll charge him. Now his political career is over. We're not really prosecuting a political rival anymore. We're prosecuting a guy who's out of politics, and we're holding him responsible. prosecuting the leading political rival during the election cycle is a bad look. It's just a bad. It's just a. It's a bad look, and I'm not a big fan of it. I think that it's a dangerous little game that I think that the Democrats are playing. But former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr joined Fox Across America on Wednesday to share his reaction to President Trump's. Well, he's on Fox, so I wonder what his opinion is going to be. When people were talking about it, I said that the case was an abomination. I didn't think it was going to be brought to an end. Blah 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 blah. The bottom line is, there's going to be an appeal. The jury instructions were kind of weird. They didn't want to name these underlying charges. I just don't think it's going to hold up on appeal. The venue, he probably should have gotten a change of venue, just based on the biasness of the judge and the venue that he was in and all that stuff. But that's an aside. To say that this is probably going to be overturned, I think is a pretty obvious. Well, duh. I would be very surprised if that's not overturned. I tell you this though, if he gets prosecuted, if he gets found guilty on the classified documents case, I think that's a much more serious case. It's not a question. He did it. So that's the one that could, I don't know, man. That's the one that could actually put him in jail. Voters who dislike Trump and Biden say the former president. I think this is maybe this is the other side of this thing, is voters who dislike Trump and Biden say the former president's conviction will not impact their vote. I don't think anybody's vote's changing. I don't think anybody's vote's changing over the. Yeah. So and so should Biden. They should. Here's my thing. Is like everybody should be. Let's try all these presidents then, right? Let's try all the. If we're going to put Trump on trial, especially on any kind of federal, especially at any kind of federal level, my thing is this: let's go all the way back, right? Why didn't Clinton? All these women who accused Clinton of some pretty horrible stuff that never saw the inside of a courtroom. George W. Bush lied to get us into Iraq. It's the war crimes list against George W. Bush. Barack Obama drone assassinated, not on the battlefield, an actual assassination of an American citizen. And I think 3 other American citizens died in that drone attack. You can't you can't kill Americans outside of the judicial process. I mean, you can't just assassinate American citizens outside of due process. That never saw the inside of a courtroom. So let's go then. If the rule is, if the new America is, and if God willing, from my lips to God's ears, if the new America is going to be nobody's above the law, including politicians, great, let's go. That's not the case, right? It's not the case that politicians are going to be above the law. What you're getting is left. Look, again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not here to defend Trump. But what you're getting is leftist prosecutors trying to make a name for themselves, going after Donald Trump. It's not any more complicated than that. What the Department of Justice is doing with the classified documents case, hey, he did it. So did Biden. So if Biden is not, I'm a firm believer in if Biden's not competent to stand trial, that he's not competent to be president. Let's go. Let's get the charges. If not, Joe Biden's president of the United States. Let's impeach him on this mishandling of classified documents and see where it goes. That's how we go. That's how we handle crimes by the president. Let's get an impeachment trial going. Let's get the hearing going. That shows that. Look, you want to tell the American people that there's a fundamental, properly functioning criminal justice system. Great. We either have this backdoor, we don't go after our political rivals, or no, nobody's above the law. Let's go. Those are the options. It's not, the option isn't, well, we're going to prosecute this guy in these venues, and I mean, let's go. But it's not going to happen. We're not going to get to a place where where this is going to happen. I honestly think that Trump, should he win, I don't even know what it looks like if Donald Trump wins the election. The only way that we have a peaceful, in my opinion, the only way that we have a peaceful transition of power at this point is if it is an absolute landslide election. And I'm hoping in either favor, but it's going to have to be an absolute, unquestionable electoral landslide. Like if Trump wins, not only is he going to he probably needs to win the popular vote, and he needs to win an electoral landslide where there's no question that he won the race. And I think the problem is I don't think that'll happen. But more importantly, I don't think that Biden wins in any kind of a landslide for sure. And if it's another close race, the idea that there's not going to be unrest, I think, is pretty far-fetched. I think there's definitely going to be some level of unrest. Now, I'm not like a Tim Pool acolyte who thinks there's going to be an actual, like, all-out civil war. I don't think we're going to be in that kind of a situation, but I definitely think there's going to be widespread unrest unless the election is an absolute slam dunk landslide of an election. If it's close, if there's any question, then there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of unrest, I think, throughout the country. So buckle up for that. Have a few days worth of food. I don't think it's going to be an economic collapse or anything like that. But if you live in a major metropolitan area, as the election nears, I would start getting ready to not leave your house for a couple, 2-3 days. I generally believe things will get shaky. But hey, I'm hoping I'm wrong. But it's just my thought on this is like, I don't know how this goes smoothly, to be honest with you. I just don't know how this is going to be a peaceful, easy transition of power. I just don't see it. Like I said, unless it's an absolute crushing landslide where there's no question about who won. Let's see what else we got. Let's just go through some news stories here, right? Like I'm trying to get to an hour. I got like 10 minutes left. Let's see. I'm pretty excited that everything's even working, to be honest with you. I will be much better prepared in the coming weeks to do longer form stuff. But honestly, I've had so much trouble even getting this up and running the last couple of nights that I was like, oh my God, this can't be accurate. This has got to be a BS story. Fauci says unvaccinated Americans are probably responsible for up to 300,000 deaths. He can't come out and say. Probably we're responsible. Oh my God, seriously? Double down on it, huh? I'm not vaccinated, and when I say that to people, I get the same thing. Like are you a anti-vaxxer or some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist? And I'm like, no. I was in the military for 9 years. They injected me with all kinds of crap. So I'm not a fan of vaccines. I didn't have a choice, and so I'm not a fan. And in 2020, I just finished running my second marathon. I was a pretty healthy body weight. I was a pretty healthy guy. I looked at the information. I'm like, well, I'm not obese. I don't have any comorbidities. I'll take my chances. I'll get it. I don't like being vaccinated. And that's it. It was really that simple. I think it was a weird thing to like this whole idea that everybody who's not vaccinated is some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but jump in here real quick. The beauty of doing something like this is, for the most part, when you're a small creator, I kind of just ramble on a little bit because there's not a lot of people in here, so that's fun. I know on YouTube it'll be up, though, so see what else we got for news stories out there. The Fauci, why don't So why do we care about this? Like, it's not that look, I'm not anti or pro or any, like, I don't care, dude. It's like, I don't care. Can we just stop talking about it, for God's sakes, please? Clay Travis, the founder of Outkick, appeared on Fox News this week to discuss the ongoing drama between Caitlin Clark and the rest of the WNBA. The right-leaning Travis theorized that Clark is being mistreated in part because of her sexuality. Clark, who is dating a former Iowa men's basketball player, is straight. Many of the WNBA players, meanwhile, are gay. Okay, so see, this is the kind of stupidity I'm talking about. So you have a Jamil Hill comes out, says that the reason Caitlin Clark is so popular, blah, 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 is because she's white. It's a really stupid thing to say. She's the best college basketball player to come out of college since the WNBA was founded. Of course, there's going to be all this hype around her. She's this amazing freaking player. Well, guess what? She's a rookie. She's got all this hype. I don't care what league she's going into. I don't care that her competitors are homosexual. At the end of the day, these WNBA players who've been grinding out in the league for a while, yeah, they're going to have a little something extra for her. That's how it is with rookies, especially when the hype is that big. So, no, they're not attacking Caitlin Clark because she's gay. They're attacking her because she's an incredibly popular rookie, and they're Wookie, I said. She's an incredibly popular rookie, making a ton of money. Is there a little resentment around that? Yeah, that's just pretty natural human reaction to what's going on. And they're going to have a little something extra for her. When Jordan played the Pistons, he got his butt kicked. They beat the crap out of that man. The Jordan rule was don't let him get off the ground. Like, it was well known that they were going after Michael Jordan physically. What were they doing it because he was like, all this identity politics stuff is just crazy. Like, all these WNBA players are going hard on Caitlin Clark because she's straight. No, they're not. They're going hard on her because she's an incredibly popular rookie who's making a ton of money. They got something extra for her. It's not just race, though. It's also sexuality. Travis claimed Caitlin Clark is a white heterosexual woman in a black lesbian league. Jesus, what is this guy talking about? So, like, here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. This is where, if you understand, right, me at all, it's understanding that this guy's an ass clown every bit as much as Jamil Hill is. What a stupid, like, what a dumb far right, like, just a dumb take. And this is the kind of stuff that gets, oh my God, it just blows my mind. And people will say it. They'll just throw it out there because, I don't know, it gets you a click, I guess. Oh my God. Chinese Defense Minister Yunus, China should not go into confrontation. Well, no kidding on that. Paramount permanently banned creepy clown Robert De Niro. I don't think that's true. Let's see what we got going on here. Let's take a peek at this one. Trump election case in Georgia put on hold until outcome of appeal against Fani Willis. The Georgia Court of Appeals on Wednesday temporarily halted the 2020 election racketeering case involving former President Donald Trump to the appeal seeking the disqualification of Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is resolved. This isn't going to happen until, from what I'm understanding, is this case isn't going to get anywhere until after the election, which I think is a good idea. I think the whole thing, like I said, if we were to go after Trump, should have been after this election was over. He's not going to jail. You're not taking him off the ballot. You should have just chilled, let the election play its course. If he gets elected, you impeach him, and that's how we judicially handle presidents. If he doesn't get elected, then you just charge him. But going after your political rival during an election cycle is just a really bad look, and it's a dangerous little game we're playing. So that's just my 2 cents. Take it with a grain of salt. Let's see what else we got for news as I'm wrapping up here. I'm super excited this worked, by the way. Super excited. I can't wait. I've been on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok now, and it looks like my stream is working on all the platforms. So please, if you have an opportunity, I'm going to be live every night at 9 o'clock, between 8:30 and 9 for at least an hour. Subscribe to go to my link tree, subscribe to the other stuff just because I keep getting taken down on TikTok. Opinion, don't blame Israel first. WNBA makes major announcement on Angel Reese's ejection. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Let's see what Kamala Harris had to say about Trump's conviction. Oh, there's no video? That's unfortunate. Vice President Kamala Harris stopped by Jimmy Kimmel Live on Wednesday, and one of the biggest things Kimmel wanted to know is what she thought of Donald Trump's recent criminal conviction. In all seriousness, Harris said a jury of 12 peers, over the course of 6 weeks, deliberated on the evidence and facts and unanimously determined guilt for 34 felony counts. There's a defense attorney who actively participated in selecting that jury, who actively made decisions about witnesses to call, witnesses to cross-examine, and the jury made their decision. I agree. Right now, he's a felon. He's a convicted felon. There's not a oh, look at me getting spammed here. Let's get rid of this guy, and boom. Bye. So you got this, well, let's see. Oh,
the third most powerful American in the world after Joe Biden and Taylor Swift. She is the 49th Vice President of the United States from right here in California. Please welcome Kamala Harris.
She is so, you know what's funny about Kamala Harris is when they talk about what would happen if something were happen to Joe Biden. If Joe Biden doesn't make it to November, it's one of my favorite conspiracy theories, is that the president of the United States and the Democrat Party in general actively knows that the president is not going to make it to Election Day. It's one of my favorite conspiracy theories out there. But the fact of the matter is, when they go through the lists of who would replace Joe, Kamala Harris's name never comes up. It's like Michelle Obama, it's Gavin Newsom. Nobody talks about the vice president. That is how fundamentally unpopular Kamala Harris is. Like, if I'm Kamala Harris, honest to God, I want out. She's got to know she's never going to be president of the United States. She knows now, it's pretty clear, even amongst Democrats, how unpopular she is. So she's got to know. She's got to know that being the vice president is a dead end for her. She's got to want out. I mean, it's just got to be killer. When they talk about the secession options, and then it's like the vice president of the United States doesn't even come up in the conversation about who would secede, who would be the standard bearer if Biden didn't make it to November. It kills me.
That you ever imagined would happen in your lifetime?
Absolutely not. Although I was raised to understand that the rights that we fight for will not be permanent unless we are vigilant in fighting for them to continue. But the thought that almost 2 years ago, the highest court in our land took a constitutional right from the people of America, from the women of America. And
okay. God dang, she says dumb stuff. Okay, so the right to an abortion wasn't a constitutional right. The Supreme. All right, so she's the vice president of the United States. She should speak on this intelligently. Okay, so the I don't care where you stand on Roe versus Wade. It was not a constitutional right. This came from substantive due process. And they read into the right of privacy, and used the right of privacy to say that based on the right of privacy, a woman has a right to an abortion. It's not a constitutional right per se. I also don't think the federal government has the right to ban it. So all the Republicans calling for a national ban, the federal government does not have a right to ban it. But it's not like the word abortion isn't in the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. Why does she say things like this?
Understand who is to blame. The former President Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended.
So this is an interesting tack because the Democrats don't have a whole lot, right? So they have Trump's a bad guy, he's a felon, and they have Roe versus Wade. This is it. If the Democrats, I believe the polling when I see that it looks like Trump is going to win in a landslide. I believe that polling. The only way the Democrats, they're going to lean hard into Roe v. Wade, but I think inflation and the border to me is the Democrats' abortion, right? So the same way that the Republicans overplayed their hand when it came to abortion and immediately tried to separate themselves from it, I think it's the same way that the Democrats are overplaying the border issue. And I think that's going to bite them in the butt. And I also think that so what I'm saying is the Democrats, they don't have a lot. They have they also overplayed their hand. Honestly, on the prosecution of Donald Trump, I think that they should have done what they could have to separate themselves from that. I don't care where you stand on it from a purely political perspective, from a strategy perspective. I don't think it was a good idea for this prosecution to move forward kind of the way that it did. I think this was a bad idea. I think it's going to hurt the Democrats. I think it's done nothing but elevate Donald Trump in the eyes of certainly you're not going to turn his most ardent supporters against him, but I'm guessing that independents who are not on the progressive front of like the trans rights and all this other kind of like the more far left intersectional race, everything's race-based, sex-based, the independents who are not on that side of this thing, I think you're pushing them towards the Republicans. I genuinely believe that. And I also think that in the major cities, in the major metropolitan areas, that I don't think blacks are going to turn out and vote for Donald Trump. I think they're just not going to show up for Joe Biden. And the Democrats can't win without the black vote. And I don't think the black vote's going to show up for Joe Biden. I don't think, like I said, I don't think they're going to go out and vote Republican. I just think they're not going to show up. And without the black vote, the Democrats can't win. That's been the case for a long, long time. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's looking good for the Democrats personally in the upcoming race. I think they've made a lot of mistakes. But hey, guess what? I'm not a political strategist. Point is, I think the important takeaway here is that I was able to get online. This functioned properly. I can shut this all down, look at the video, see what it looks like, and I think we might be able to rock and roll with this moving forward. So TikTok, goodbye to you first. Oh look, I just had somebody pop in here and I can't get off quite yet. But yeah, well, there you go. All right, I'm out. I'm gonna get rid of this thing. Goodbye, everybody.